It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The warning tonight of the risk of a new descent into civil war after more than 1,300 people are killed in fighting in Syria. President Trump says that Ukraine may not survive anyway when questioned about his decision to suspend U.S. aid. The warning from the government that long-term disability benefits could be targeted in an effort to cut the welfare bill. As Canada's Prime Minister prepares to move aside, why the country's next leader, revealed tonight, could be a very familiar face here in the UK. Plus, families remember the victims of COVID on a day of reflection, 5 years on from the start of the pandemic. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Syria's new leader said tonight he will not allow any external or local forces to drag his country into a new civil war. Ahmed Shara was speaking after an estimated 1,300 people were killed, mainly civilians, and mainly by forces loyal to or allied with his Islamist government. Well, the violence began when gunmen loyal to the former regime of President Assad ambushed military targets and checkpoints in the coastal region of northwest Syria. It triggered a military crackdown by security forces of the new government led by Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. The clashes have centered on Syria's west coast in the regions of Latakia and Tartus. The city of Banyas has seen the worst of the violence. Now, these regions are the heartland of the Alawite minority and a stronghold of the Assad family, who belong to the Alawite sect. Hundreds of Alawites have been killed over the last 2 days by the government's forces and militant groups allied with it. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says at least 830 civilians have been killed, mostly in massacres, as well as 250 pro-Assad fighters and 231 people from the security forces. Our international correspondent, John Sparks, reports.
After days of sectarian bloodshed, troops loyal to Syria's new leader try to re-establish control. Rifles drawn and fired in the coastal area of Latakia. This is the heartland of the Alawite minority who dominated the nation under Bashar al-Assad, and his loyalists remain. When they staged an ambush, it triggered a furious response. Tit-for-tat killings have swept through the region.
Thank God, security and safety have been gradually restored. God willing, we will continue to hunt down the remnants of the regime until security and safety returns to the coast.
To crush the rebellion, the interim government has deployed soldiers and militiamen from all over the country. But this ramshackle force has terrorized the residents, and hundreds of Alawites have been killed, their bodies reportedly lying in the streets. Witnesses told Sky News of targeted executions.
They dragged the man out of the house, his wife and son, to the floor, cursed them and called them Alawite pigs. They shot the man first, dragged the daughter to the floor, yelled at her and slapped her again and again. Then they made her brother stand facing the wall and shot him in the head.
They killed my relatives, my uncle, his wife, and my cousins of my mother's sister and brother. I don't know what to say. The bodies are scattered on the streets. You see bodies of children aged 1 or 2 years old. It's just indescribable. Bodies of women, children, elderly people, indescribable. Those are not Assad loyalists. We are not Assad loyalists. They killed us for the mere reason of being Alawites, just because we're Alawites.
Former rebel turned president Ahmad al-Shara made a plea for national unity. Anyone who harmed civilians would be punished, he said.
What is currently happening in Syria represents the type of expected challenges. We must preserve national unity, and we can live together, God willing, in unity in this country.
Here we see al-Shara's men drawn from a number of Sunni Muslim groups. burying their dead in northwest Syria. At least 200 of their number have been killed, and many seem bent on revenge. The country now grappling with the prospect of a far larger war.
If it was not for the pure blood of these martyrs, the Assad loyalists would have committed even more horrific acts. But we swear before God that we will make them taste what we endured 200 times, 2,000 times.
Syria's transitional authority said everybody would be safe under its rule, but that's a promise it's been unable to keep in a volatile nation awash with arms. John Sparks, Sky News.
President Trump has said that Ukraine might not survive anyway when questioned about his decision to suspend U.S. aid. In an interview with Fox News, he reiterated his view that the Ukrainian president wasn't grateful and had a stark warning about the country's future.
Are you comfortable with that? The fact that you walked away and Ukraine may not survive?
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, you know, we have some weaknesses with Russia. You know, it takes two. Look, it was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess.
Let's go live to Washington and our international correspondent, Diana Magnay. Diana, the U.S. and Ukraine are actually due to hold a meeting sometime this week, but we're hearing here more tough talk from Donald Trump to Zelensky.
We are. It begs the question, though, what does that even mean? You know, well, Ukraine might not survive anyway, and Russia also has weaknesses. I mean, I think that, you know, you hear sentences like this from Donald Trump, and they are deeply alarming for Ukraine, coming as they do on the back of the suspension of military aid, the suspension of intelligence sharing, the fact that Donald Trump clearly seems to take Vladimir Putin's position on this war, and the idea that Ukraine shouldn't exist as a sovereign nation is pretty much a Kremlin-fed idea. But I also wonder whether Donald Trump, as we have heard over the last 50 days, it is tomorrow, does tend to swing around on a lot of the things he says, and he says things in the spur of the moment, and this is extremely unfortunate if he really means it. But, you know, he says a lot. What we do know is that this week we will have meetings between Ukrainian officials and US officials. And what we understand from sources from the US side, talking, for example, to our US affiliate NBC, is that they will be looking for not just a commitment from Ukraine that they want peace, but they want a realistic peace, i.e. that they don't simply want a territorial return to 2014, which was before Russia seized Crimea, or 2022, before they invaded properly again. There's been a war since 2014, as you know. And I think to a certain extent that is fair enough to say we've got to be realistic. Russia is not going to necessarily withdraw from all the territory that it has conquered over the last 3 years of war. The question is whether they'll push even further on Zelensky and demand elections, demand that he step down, all of these things which actually are constitutionally impossible. And again, which seem to take Russia's side on all of this. And this is the very difficult thing that President Zelensky and his advisors must weigh up when they meet US officials in Riyadh, given the fact that they urgently need military aid and intelligence back.
Diana Magnay with the latest on that development in Washington. Diana, thank you. Well, as we've heard, Donald Trump may be creating tremors for America's allies, but among those who voted for him, there appear to be very few doubts so far. Tomorrow is his 50th day as a re-elected president, and in one famous Pennsylvania town, the response to the first 49 is overwhelmingly positive, as our U.S. correspondent Mark Stone now reports.
In rural Pennsylvania, in Chubby's Pizza, we spotted the hat through the window. It's approaching 50 days and it has been quite the ride. So what do all those who set this in motion make of it all so far? Tom Jaskulski is a retired federal worker, a handyman now, and happy.
He campaigned on all his policies, what he's going to do, and he's fulfilling them. It seems like the world's waking up when Donald Trump came in office. A lot of things are happening worldwide, not just in this country.
If you were to give Trump a score, 1 or 10, how well has he done over the past 50 days?
10. Not because I'm wearing his hat, but a 10. He's doing what he says he's going to do. You know, he's rattling the hornet's nest.
The town square, Lincoln Square, is a nod to America's most consequential president. Until now, maybe. Give me a number out of 10.
10.
And here's the thing. If the world is bewildered, buffeted by Trump, the question here is why? He's doing what he promised.
Oh, he's doing great.
Yeah, you're happy with him?
Yeah, he's doing real great. Yeah.
What are the best things that he's done, you think, over
The money he's making me.
Trying to pass the no tax on Social Security, for one. No tax on the tips. No tax on overtime. Help out the workers. Help out the retirees. That's very important to me.
It feels quite chaotic. There's a sledgehammer approach to the federal government.
No, I think they're using a scalpel. They're just finding so much. It looks bad.
And what about all the people losing their jobs?
We had too many people that were in those jobs that it was just waste. Nothing. They weren't doing anything.
He's upsetting Europe as well.
Yeah.
That's not good. We're supposed to be friends, aren't we?
Well, yeah. Well, we need Europe to step up, too.
But then it doesn't take much to find deep angst here, too.
I'm a trans person, so a lot of his policies have been impacting transgender people, and that is just, I feel like it's a scary time to live in.
I guess people who agree with him kind of feel emboldened by what he's doing, which must make it even more concerning for you.
That's absolutely accurate, I would say. There's a lot of hatred in the world right now, especially at so many groups of people. I mean, it's really, yeah.
Up the road, Tina runs the local pet spa. Trump voter, no regrets, and baffled at why anyone would think she would.
He's doing what he said he was going to do, and I'm quite happy with him right now.
And what about Ukraine?
It's not our war. We have enough people in this country suffering. That's how I feel about it. I don't think that they deserve our money.
But then our conversation with apprentice Molly, too, cuts to the heart of all this. Siloed worlds.
The Social Security, blowing that open with all of the people that are over 124 still getting Social Security.
160, I heard.
Yeah, that's insane.
I mean, that's been debunked. That wasn't true. I'm kind of worried that people are believing things that actually aren't true, that the Trump administration is telling you stuff that isn't true. What do you think?
I think it's both ways. I think both sides put out fake news and fake propaganda for each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be playing a game of poorhouse trivia here.
The day ends at the local bar and brewery. Quiz night.
I've never been more embarrassed to be American.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Yeah.
What's going on in America? How can it be so divided?
I think it's the access to information. I think we don't go out and talk to each other. I think we're on the internet all day. A lot of people are just on the internet. And they're getting news sources from their own echo chambers.
Things have been going downhill for a long time. And I don't know, I'm not saying he's right about everything, but you know what, at least he's trying to do something. He's doing something different, and I agree with what he's doing.
Time is up. I need those guesses.
The wave of change has been profound, but to assume that those who chose it, who chose him, would have any regrets, well, that would be to fundamentally misunderstand America today. Mark Stone, Sky News in Pennsylvania.
Canada's new Prime Minister is expected to be announced shortly as the ruling Liberal Party selects a new leader to replace Justin Trudeau. The former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney is the frontrunner. If elected, he will have to steer Canada through the major challenge presented by Donald Trump's tariffs. We'll bring you that announcement live from Ottawa as it happens. The U.S. Secret Service says it has shot a man close to the White House after what it called an armed confrontation. Police say a suicidal individual traveled to Washington, D.C. from Indiana before that armed confrontation took place. President Trump is not in Washington at the moment as he spent the weekend in Florida. Israel says it's cutting off its electricity supply to Gaza. Israel has sought to force Hamas to accept an extension of the first phase of their ceasefire, a phase which ended last weekend. A senior minister has given the clearest indication yet that the government has long-term disability benefits in its sights as it tries to save money and cut the welfare benefits bill. Pat McFadden was speaking to Sky News after Chancellor Rachel Reeves had told our Electoral Dysfunction podcast that welfare needed reform because it's costing too much. Our chief political correspondent John Craig reports.
Good girl. Don't find the door.
Kelsey Trevitt is 23 and blind, works full-time and claims a personal independence payment, a long-term disability benefit which could be a target for welfare cuts. It helps to pay for Braille technology for reading, online shopping and other essentials.
My initial reaction to the government's plan is concern, deep concern. I think it's really worrying to have the threat of my independence being literally taken away from me is terrifying. I think if this plan came to fruition, it would mean that the choices that I make about how I live my life are incredibly limited compared to the people around me.
Yet this week, a crackdown on welfare spending is coming.
We do have to act on this to make sure that we give everyone in the country the opportunity to work. We are the Labour Party. The clue is in the name. We cannot be relaxed about every year hundreds of thousands more people going on these benefits.
According to the government, 9 million people of working age are not working. 2.8 million of these, 30%, are on long-term sickness benefits. Spending on incapacity and disability benefits has soared by £20 billion since the pandemic. And the cost of this is forecast to reach £70 billion by 2030. Charities say the cost of living is higher for disabled people.
Cutting disability benefits would deal another catastrophic blow to disabled people's lives. We know many disabled households are in poverty. There's a risk that many more households might fall into further poverty if the government goes ahead and cuts disability benefits further.
But the Chancellor has told Sky News the government needs to get better value for money from welfare.
We've got to reform our welfare system because at the moment it's letting down taxpayers because it's costing too much. It's letting down our economy because there's too many people trapped on out-of-work benefits. And it's letting down the people who are recipients of benefits because they are trapped on benefits rather than actively supported back into work.
But welfare cuts, just like cuts in overseas aid to pay for more defence spending, are likely to be opposed by many Labour MPs. And Sir Keir Starmer could face a backlash when he addresses his backbenchers at Monday evening's meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party.
Come on.
But for people like Kelsey, this is not about politics, but preserving independence.
And John Craig joins us live now from Westminster. John, Labour talking a tough message today on welfare spending and the need to save billions now, of course, very, very pressing.
Yes, and those cuts in welfare could really come in 6 areas. First, those personal independence payments. What we might see from the Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall is a proposal to curtail the eligibility. So, for example, people with what you might call milder ailments like anxiety and depression rather than blindness, they might lose their benefits or find them cut. That's the personal independent payments. Secondly, or there could be a freeze also on those rather than going up with inflation. Secondly, sickness benefits, more checks. Thirdly, a prioritising of people who have been in work rather than people who haven't. So in other words, you're more likely to get benefit if you've lost your job rather than if you've never made any attempt to find a job. Prioritising benefits there. Also talk there, of course, calling that unemployment insurance. Fourth, a merger perhaps of the job seekers allowance and the employment support allowances. Fifthly, perhaps time limiting some of the benefits. Sixthly,
crack down on benefits for younger people to try and get them into work. Now, there are 1 million young people not working, according to the government. That's 1 in 8. A travesty, Rachel Reeves said when she spoke to Beth Rigby in that interview. It's all likely to be proposed, unveiled when Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, launches a consultation paper. That would presumably lead to white paper legislation, all the legislative process. But make no mistake, cuts are on the way, and as I've mentioned, up to 6 areas, could be more. Pretty wide-ranging cuts as the government tries to, first of all, to save money, obviously, the bloated welfare bill, but also get people into work, get the economy moving better, that growth agenda we hear so much about.
We do indeed. John Craig with the latest there from Westminster. John, thank you. The hearts on the COVID memorial wall in central London run on for half a kilometre. There are more than 240,000 of them, each representing someone who passed away. Today, in ceremonies there and across the nations and regions of the UK, those who died were remembered on a national day of reflection. Our correspondent Ashna Hurinag reports.
It was to this lament they walked together, right beside their loved ones, who are immortalised in the hand-painted red hearts of the National Memorial. This is their family's place to remember the almost 250,000 people who died with COVID-19 in the UK, including Victoria's husband Simon, who was 59.
He caught COVID 5 years next week, and he went into hospital, and they put him on a ventilator, and then when his heart started to fail, they put a do not resuscitate on him, and he died.
How often do you think about that moment?
You think about it all the time, you know.
How can anyone forget? Those who isolated and sacrificed stood with those who continue to grieve. Helen and Stephen Hughes did all three. Both healthcare workers, they did all they could to shield Helen's 79-year-old mother from the virus. But she died in January 2021.
And then it really sort of hit home when we was at work, seeing like really, really poorly people coming through the doors.
We were still trying to stay strong for the family, weren't we? And still trying to do our day jobs as well.
Every day as well.
Yeah, it's something that, as a family, we're never going to get over.
Around the country, acts of community and a minute's silence allowed the chance to collectively remember the worst and most surreal of times. In Glasgow, Scotland's First Minister joined the tributes. And in the serenity of the Welsh valleys, mourners united in similar solemnity, where the impact of the pandemic is etched onto Bulk Mountain. The Yellow Heart was built by the bereaved. At the National Memorial Arboretum, writer and poet Michael Rosen reminded us of what was once the new normal.
Coughing and coughing, gasping for air, we remember. Empty streets, no cars anywhere.
Michael survived COVID after being in an induced coma for 48 days. He says a Remembrance Day like this is a must.
When you have a day of reflection, you know everybody's doing it. You know, it's not just me. I'm talking about my experience, but this is for everybody, so people can share it, and then we have a sense that you're not isolated, you're not left all alone suffering this stuff.
Hundreds of families didn't feel so alone today. It's why they want this tradition to continue, as something for them and for those they've lost. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
Let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News and Rahul.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
When he came back to Tottenham as an Arsenal player, the crowd were unbelievably abusive towards him.
It was very intense. You could
You could cut the atmosphere, you could just feel it was different.
Sol Campbell comes out to face the music, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that this North London derby revolved around just one man.
Back then, there was no support. People were just allowed to just carry on in a disgraceful way.
Sol is a sensitive human being, so obviously he felt it, but he didn't show it.
Obviously he's a great player, and obviously all the managers were desperate to keep him on the books.
The world was his oyster.
He was become one of the best players that Spurs had ever had in that position. Fans absolutely adored him.
Campbell's star is still very much in the ascendancy. At international level, he returned from the World Cup with a greatly enhanced reputation. He's a player in demand, though he says for the moment he's staying put.
I'm a Tottenham man, and I'm ready to play for Tottenham. You know, I've been here for a long time, and the fans have been brilliant to me. And you know, what else can I ask for?
No player likes to have any form of distraction, no matter how minute it is. He's the type of person. He just likes to have things clear, crystal clear. That's what he's done. He's telling the fans at Spurs that he's not going anywhere.
It seemed to be a big question: when will Sol Campbell sign a new contract? Spurs fans were starting to worry about it. The media were certainly wondering about it and where it was going. From what we heard behind the scenes, Sol was unhappy at some of the things that were happening at Spurs. There'd been a series of managers. He hadn't always seen eye to eye with those managers. There'd been an incident at Derby County where he'd been accused of breaking a steward's arm, and it wasn't Sol. It was another player had been involved in a fracas, but I don't think Sol felt he was properly supported by Spurs. And I think the signs were there.
Bosman was a somewhat obscure Belgian player who fought the rules that a player at the end of his contract could leave with no fee attached. So there was all sorts of changes going on in football regarding players who were able to move without compensation to the clubs. And Sol took advantage of that.
When did you know that he wasn't going to sign?
I knew, but George Graham and David Pleat would say to me, Chairman, this is just a game they're playing. It's a game. We've been in this business for a long, long time, Chairman. It's a game. He will be signing, trust me, he will be signing. And I'm saying to these two very experienced.
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the broadcaster and commentator Alex Andreou and assistant editor at The Spectator, Cindy Yu. Welcome both. Plus, we're going to have live coverage as Canada gets a new prime minister to replace Justin Trudeau.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over $50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up, and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Mai Tai village on the front line.
Firing the civilian and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News, get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, DC.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. We'll have our press preview in just a moment. But first, let's show you these live pictures from Ottawa in Canada, where the country's new Prime Minister is about to be announced.
In third place, Karina Gould with 4,785 votes, resulting in 1,100 allocated points, representing 3.2% of the vote. In second place, Chrystia Freeland with 11,134 votes, resulting in 2,729 allocated points, representing 8% of the vote. In first place, the next Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, with 131,674 votes, resulting in 29,457 allocated points, representing 85.9% of the vote.
And we've just had the announcement that Mark Carney is now the new Prime Minister of Canada and the leader, of course, of the Liberal Party. And he won by a pretty astonishing 85% of the vote. We're expecting to hear from him soon, but let's go straight to Diana Magnay, our international correspondent. Diana, not only has he won, but he has won resoundingly.
That was an astonishing difference between him and Chrystia Freeland, the number 2, who's long been Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, who resigned at the end of last year. She only got 8% of the vote, and Mark Carney coming in with nearly 86%. That is absolutely astonishing. He promised a mandate for change within the Liberal Party, and I think that's clearly what people wanted. They wanted someone who was an economic strong hand hand which Mark Carney, having been both Governor of the Bank of England through Brexit, Governor of the Bank of Canada too, is something that, you know, economics is his bread and butter. And I think also this was clear that they just wanted to move away from the politics of the last decade of Justin Trudeau, with whom Chrystia Freeland was so closely implicated. You know, Mark Carney is a very, very solid figure in terms of the economy and therefore dealing with Donald Trump, but he doesn't have political experience in the way that Chrystia Freeland did. He's never been a politician, but in his own words, he has been a leader. You don't lead institutions like that unless you have considerable experience leading organisations. And he has a very, very difficult job on his hands in terms of this tariff war with Donald Trump. But clearly, the Canadian Liberals felt that he was the man to combat Donald Trump rather than Chrystia Freeland. Let's see what this lady is saying.
I too am introducing my father tonight, because I want Canadians to understand what kind of a man he is. And who is better qualified to speak on his character than his daughter?
Et qui est le mieux placé pour parler de son caractère que sa propre fille?
My father is, to his core, a man of commitment.
Mon père est un homme
I don't
engagé.
just mean that in a general sense.
Je ne dis pas cela de façon générale.
Unflinchingly dedicated to what
Il est
matters.
indéfaillible et se concentre sur ce qui compte. Il est concentré sur les principes.
And kind.
Il est amusant et bienveillant.
Canadians care about actions.
Les Canadiens
And my
veulent de
father
l'action.
is a man of action.
Et mon père est un homme
A man
d'action.
who has traveled the length of
Un
Canada
homme
to hear what
qui s'est
Canadians
déplacé d'un
want
océan à
from their
l'autre pour
leaders.
être à l'écoute des Canadiens et
What
des
they want
Canadiennes.
for their future.
Connaître ce que les
He's
Canadiens
up
veulent pour
early
leur
to
avenir.
read his papers
Il
and
se lève
stays
tôt
up
le
late
matin pour lire
preparing
les
for the
journaux.
next day.
Il se couche
He
tard
has taught
préparant
me
la
the importance
journée du
of
lendemain.
always putting in the work.
Il m'a enseigné.
But you can work
Il m'a
hard all
montré
you
qu'il est
want.
toujours
If you
important
don't
de
have a
travailler
solid
dur.
foundation,
Mais si
there's
vous n'avez pas
nothing to
une
build
base
on.
solide, on ne peut
And
pas aller
that's what
vraiment
I
plus loin.
really want to share with you
Et c'est vraiment
tonight.
ce que j'aimerais partager
The
avec vous
foundation
aujourd'hui.
that makes my father who
La
he is.
fondation qui fait de
He
Mark
is
Carney l'homme qu'il est
unwaveringly
aujourd'hui.
supportive of the things he cares about.
Il
Every
soutient
year for our
et va
birthdays,
de l'avant
he
avec
burned
tout
us
ce
CDs, and somehow
ce à quoi il
they
croit.
were good.
Et à tous les Noëls,
Sometimes
il préparait
now,
des CD.
when we don't know what to get him, we
Aujourd'hui,
make
lorsque
him
nous ne
a
savons
playlist.
pas quoi lui donner, on lui prépare une liste de chansons.
He cheered me on in the freezing cold at my cross-country races.
Lorsque je suis allée faire mes
He sat
compétitions
for
de
hours
ski
to
de
help
fond,
me with my math homework,
il a affronté le froid. Il s'est
persevering
assis pendant
until I
des heures
understood.
à m'aider en
I
mathématiques
can
jusqu'à
tell
ce
you
que
that
je
I
comprenne.
appreciate this more in hindsight than I did at the
Maintenant, je
time.
vous dis que je l'apprécie un peu plus qu'à l'époque.
In all seriousness,
Mais
my
sérieusement,
dad invests in what matters.
mon père investit
He
dans ce qui
expects
compte.
nothing to come without hard work, and he is
Il
always
travaille
ready to
toujours
work
très
hard.
fort et il est toujours prêt à le
The
faire.
bottom. The bottom line is, however hard things may seem,
Peu importe
he
si
shows
les
up
choses sont
and never lets
difficiles,
you down.
il sera là. Il sera là pour vous soutenir.
He has and always will show up for you.
Il sera toujours
For
là pour vous.
Canadians
Il sera
and for
toujours là
Canada.
pour les Canadiens et le
Because
Canada.
he cares about this great country.
Le pays lui tient à cœur.
Now, my father,
Maintenant,
your new Liberal leader,
mon père, votre
and the
nouveau
24th Prime Minister of
chef de
Canada,
parti, le
Mark
23e
Carney.
Premier ministre du Canada.
Merci.
Leo Carney, Mark Carney's daughter there, saying a few words about her father. She said he taught her the importance of hard work. Let's listen to Mark Carney speak now.
Prime Minister, I think it's clear we should just skip a generation.
Premier ministre, on devrait tout simplement passer à la prochaine génération.
Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. Wow. This room is strong.
Il y a tellement d'énergie dans cette salle.
This room This room is Canada strong.
Cette salle représente la force du Canada.
Cleo.
Merci, merci Cléo.
And to my wife, Diana, our children,
J'aimerais
Cleo,
remercier mon épouse Diana, mes enfants
Amelia and
Cléo,
Sasha.
Tess, Amelia et Sacha.
Without your support,
Sans votre soutien,
I wouldn't be standing here.
je ne serais pas ici sur la scène.
And like the Prime Minister,
Et comme le Premier ministre,
without your examples,
sans votre
I wouldn't have a
exemple,
purpose.
je n'aurais pas de but.
And without
D'autre
your
part,
love,
sans votre amour,
I wouldn't have the strength
je
that I
n'aurais
need
pas
for
la
what lies
force
ahead.
pour affronter ce qui nous attend.
Monsieur Chrétien,
Mr. Chrétien,
vous énergiez
you still know how
encore
to
les
energize
troupes et les partisans, les militants du Parti libéral
supporters
comme personne
like no
ne peut
one
le faire.
else can do it.
Vous avez marqué l'histoire en prenant des décisions courageuses.
Historic decisions.
Vous avez montré à nos alliés
You showed our allies
que le Canada
that Canada
se tiendra
will always stand
toujours
up
debout
for what is
pour ce qui
just
est juste.
and fair.
Et vous êtes une source d'inspiration pour tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes.
Canadians across the land.
And may I say that you inspired my family
Vous avez
to
inspiré ma
become
famille
liberals,
pour devenir des libéraux,
including my father,
notamment
to
mon
run as a
père.
liberal candidate in
Mon père s'est
Alberta
présenté en tant que
in the
candidat en
1980s.
Alberta dans les années 80.
Some elections are tougher than
Vous
others,
savez, certaines élections sont plus difficiles que d'autres.
and you inspired me.
Vous m'avez également inspiré.
You inspired me over the years.
Vous m'avez inspiré au fil des
And now
ans.
to have an opportunity to continue
Maintenant, j'ai la
your tradition
possibilité d'aller de
of fiscal
l'avant avec
responsibility,
votre tradition
social
de
justice, and
responsabilité fiscale,
international leadership.
de justice sociale et de leadership à l'international.
Prime Minister Trudeau,
Monsieur
my
le Premier
time
ministre Trudeau,
doesn't permit me to
j'ai
recognize
malheureusement
all your
pas assez de
accomplishments
temps pour reconnaître
So I'll
toutes vos
speak
réalisations.
at a higher level. You have combined
Vous avez
strength
réussi à
and
associer
compassion
force et
every
compassion
day as a
à
fighter
tous les jours
for Canada.
lorsque vous êtes battu pour le Canada.
You have led us
Vous étiez à la
through
tête
some of
du
the hardest
pays
challenges that this
lors des
nation
défis
has
les plus
ever
difficiles
faced.
que nous ayons pu affronter.
Et en même temps,
At the same time,
vous avez transformé le
have
Canada,
transformed
bien transformé
Canada. You've
notre
transformed
pays,
it.
en sortant de centaines de milliers d'enfants
Hundreds of
de la
thousands of
pauvreté,
kids out of poverty.
en faisant vraiment avancer la
Moving
réconciliation
reconciliation
et
forward.
en défendant la liberté et la démocratie
Freedom and
toujours ici
democracy
et ailleurs
here
dans le
and
monde.
across the world.
C'est vrai. Monsieur le Premier ministre, je
Prime
parle
Minister, I
pour
think
tout le
I am
monde
speaking for
en
everyone
vous
here
remerciant
when I thank you
pour votre travail
for your
acharné,
hard work.
comme Ella Grace l'a mentionné,
As Ella Grace
votre
said,
travail acharné,
your hard
votre
work,
leadership
for your
et pour
leadership
votre
and
service
for your
à
service
notre grand
to our
pays.
great country.
Je tiens
And I'd
à
also
vous
like to thank
remercier,
you,
chez Libéraux,
Liberals,
de m'avoir
for having
accordé
awarded me
le plus grand
the
honneur qui
greatest
soit,
honor possible,
celui de
which is
servir
to serve
comme votre
as
nouveau
your new
chef.
leader.
Merci.
Thank you.
Et merci aux
I'd like
dizaines
to
de
thank,
milliers de bénévoles à travers
tens
le
of
pays
thousands of
pour votre dévouement à rebâtir
volunteers
notre
across the
parti
country who
et
have,
à redonner l'espoir
devoted themselves
au
to
Canada.
rebuilding our country and to giving back hope to our country.
I pledge to you
Je vous promets,
and to all
et je promets à
Canadians
tous les
that
Canadiens et
I
Canadiennes
will follow their example.
que je
I
suivrai
will work day
leur
and
exemple.
night with one
Je
purpose,
travaillerai jour
which
et
is
nuit
to
avec un
build a
objectif,
stronger Canada for
de
everyone.
bâtir un Canada plus solide pour tous.
But I will need help.
J'aurai besoin de votre aide.
I will need a lot of
Enfin,
help.
beaucoup d'aide.
And so I'd like to thank
J'aimerais
Christia,
remercier
Frank,
Christia,
and
Frank
Karina
et Karina
for your energy and ideas
énergie,
and leadership
pour
that
vos
you
idées,
have brought to this
ce que nous
campaign.
avons pu observer lors de cette campagne.
And I would like also to
J'aimerais
thank
également remercier
those ministers who remained in their
ministres
posts to serve Canada
qui ont
directly
continué
during
de
this time of
desservir
great
les
peril.
Canadiens à ce moment de grand péril.
And to the incredible group
Et au
of
groupe
Liberal
extraordinaire
MPs
de
that we
députés
have.
libéraux,
You are the
vous
voices
êtes
for your communities,
la voix de
and
vos
you are the
communautés.
conscience of our
et vous êtes la
party.
conscience
Thank you
de
for your
notre
service.
parti. Merci.
Now, to give a sense
Juste pour vous
of
donner
that
une
service,
petite idée du service,
I'm going to quote from a message that I
j'aimerais citer un
and
message
Christia and
que
Karina,
moi et que mes
Karina and
collègues,
Frank, the three of us, the four of us,
que nous quatre
received
avons reçu
from someone called Bob Zettel.
de la part de Bob Zettel.
Now, Bob, full disclosure,
Bob,
I know the leader of the opposition's into full disclosure, so I'm going to full
Alors,
disclosure.
comme
Full
l'aimerait
disclosure.
bien le chef
Just want
de
to get this on the
l'opposition,
table. Bob goes to my
Bob
church.
Zettel fréquente mon église.
Actually,
Plutôt,
I go to Bob's church because
l'opposé.
he goes there a
Je
lot more
vais à
frequently
l'église
than
de
I do.
Bob car il y va beaucoup
Anyways,
plus souvent que moi.
point is, Bob wrote to the
Il
four
nous a écrit,
candidates, and he said, I
et
quote,
je le cite,
right now,
à l'heure actuelle,
everyone sees the main threat
tout le monde
as the
perçoit
Trump tariffs.
la principale
But the
menace
far
comme étant les
greater
tarifs de
challenge
Trump. Mais le défi,
will
le
be,
plus
as
grand
it
défi qui
always
vous
has
attend
been,
a toujours été et
to foster
continuera
unity
d'être
and a sense of the
l'unité
common good.
et
There are those
de
who will
travailler
seek
pour le bien
power
commun.
by dividing
Plusieurs
us.
recherchent le pouvoir en nous
We'll
divisant.
get to that later on.
J'y reviendrai.
And we being the people of Canada,
Et
we
nous
need
devons,
you,
nous, les
my
Canadiens et
fellow
les Canadiennes,
candidates, myself, to
ainsi que mes
continue in
collègues,
positions of leadership to
devons
promote a
poursuivre
united
dans ces positions de
Canada. A
leadership pour
commitment,
promouvoir un Canada uni,
a commitment
un engagement
to common good
envers
and the
le bien
respect
commun,
and the rule of
le
law
respect de la
throughout the
justice et
world.
l'état de droit partout sur la planète.
See, I quote Bob because right
J'ai
now
cité
all
Bob,
Canadians are being asked to serve in their own ways.
Tous les Canadiens
We're
doivent
all being called
participer.
to stand up for each
Nous
other
devons
and for the Canadian
nous
way
défendre
of
les uns
life.
les autres et nous devons défendre le pays.
So let me ask you,
J'ai une question à vous
who's
poser.
ready?
Qui est prêt?
Qui est prêt? Who's ready to stand up for Canada with me?
Qui est prêt à défendre le Canada avec moi?
100%.
Vous
Yes.
tous, n'est-ce pas?
Yes. Yes, Canada.
Oui.
Yes, Canada. The Liberal Party
Le
is
Parti
united
libéral est
and
uni
strong
et
and
fort
ready to fight to
et
build
prêt
an
à se
even
battre
better country.
pour bâtir un pays encore meilleur.
Now, I feel like everything in my life
J'ai
has
l'impression
helped
que tout ce que
prepare
j'ai fait
me
dans ma vie m'a
for this
préparé
moment.
pour ce moment.
2 months ago,
Il y a de ça
I
2
put up
mois,
my hand to run for leader
je me suis
because I
présenté
felt
comme
we
candidat
needed
à
big
la
changes.
chefferie car j'avais
Big
l'impression
changes
qu'on
guided
devait
by
apporter des grands
strong
changements,
Canadian values.
appuyés
The
par de
values
bonnes
I
valeurs
learned at the dinner
canadiennes, des
table
valeurs que j'ai
from my
apprises à
parents,
la
Bob and
table
Verly, and my 3
avec mes
siblings,
parents, Bob et
Brenda,
Verly,
Sean, and Brian.
et avec mes 3 frères et sœurs,
Values that
Brenda,
I
Sean et
learned
Brian.
at the hockey rinks of
Des valeurs que j'ai
Edmonton from my
apprises
coaches,
sur la patinoire
such as
à
Stormin Norman
Edmonton
Lee.
de mes
He exists.
entraîneurs.
We
Stormin
didn't call him
Norman
that to his
Lee.
face, by the way, but that was his. My parents were teachers,
Mes parents étaient des
and
enseignants.
they stressed the importance of
Ils ont
hard
toujours
work,
souligné
of community,
l'importance
and
du
of
travail acharné, de la
tolerance.
communauté et de la tolérance.
My coaches were
Mes
dedicated
entraîneurs étaient des
volunteers
bénévoles
who taught me
dévoués
the importance
qui m'ont
of
enseigné
teamwork,
l'importance du travail en
ambition,
équipe, de
and
l'ambition.
because it's Canada, humility.
Et étant donné que nous sommes Canadiens,
Des bonnes
ils m'ont
valeurs.
aussi enseigné l'humilité.
Des bonnes valeurs,
The right values.
des valeurs canadiennes.
Canadian values.
Je les ai emportées avec moi à
I took
l'université.
them with me to
Je
university.
les ai gardées près de moi
And I kept
en
them
gérant
close to
des
me
crises ici au
when
Canada
I was
et
called
ailleurs
upon to
dans le
manage
monde.
crises here in Canada and across
Ces
the
mêmes valeurs
world.
m'ont guidé
These same
dans mon
values have
travail
guided me
pour
in my work
bâtir des
to
économies
build
fortes.
strong economies.
Et aujourd'hui,
And today,
j'ai mis accroche alors que nous faisons face
I
à la
will
crise la plus
use
grave
those
de
values
notre
again as we
génération.
face this most serious crisis in a generation.
Canadians know that new threats demand new ideas and a new plan. They know that new challenges demand
Les
new leadership.
Canadiens et les Canadiennes
Canadians want positive leadership that will end division and help us build
un leadership positif
together.
qui mettra fin à la division et qui nous permettra d'aller de l'avant ensemble.
And to respond, my government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. Pour être clair,
To be clear here,
ça demandera des
this will
changements,
require
de
change,
grands changements.
big change.
Mais je sais
But I know
que les Canadiens et
that
Canadiennes sont
Canadians
prêts.
are ready.
Ils me le disent à travers le
They've told me
pays.
so across the country.
Les gens
People
veulent le changement
want change
parce qu'ils sont inquiets.
because they're concerned.
Ils s'inquiètent
They're
sur le
concerned
coût de la vie
about the cost of
et de
living
la crise de
and the
logement.
housing crisis as well.
Ils s'inquiètent pour
They're
l'avenir
worried,
des
for the
jeunes.
future of their young.
Ils
their
s'inquiètent
kids.
de l'avenir
They're
du
worried
Canada
about the
face aux
future of
menaces du
Canada
président Trump
in the face
et
of
à
President
un
Trump's
monde plus
threats
divisé
and
et
a more
dangereux.
divided and dangerous world.
Now, I am a pragmatist above all.
Je suis par-dessus tout un pragmatiste.
So when I see that something's that's not
Lorsque je
working,
m'aperçois
I
que
will
quelque
change it.
chose ne fonctionne pas, je
So
le
my
changerai.
government will immediately
gouvernement
eliminate the
éliminera
divisive consumer carbon
immédiatement
tax on families
la
and
taxe sur le
farmers
carbone
and
qui
small and
divise
medium-sized
les
businesses.
familles, les agriculteurs et les petites et moyennes entreprises.
And we will stop the
Nous
hike in the
mettrons
capital
fin
gains tax
à la
because we
taxe
think
sur les
builders
gains capitaux.
we think builders should be incentivized
devons
for taking
donner
risks
des
and rewarded
incitatifs,
when they succeed.
À ceux qui prennent des risques et les récompenser lorsqu'ils réussissent.
Canada needs more of this type of change.
Le Canada a besoin beaucoup
Change
plus de
that
ce type de
puts more
changement,
money in
du
people's
changement qui met
pockets.
plus d'argent dans
Change
les
that makes our companies
portefeuilles
more
des
competitive.
familles, qui rendent nos
Change
entreprises
that
plus
builds the
compétitives, des
strongest
changements
economy in the
qui met de
G7.
l'avant l'économie la plus solide des pays du G7.
Now, there is
Cependant,
there's someone who's trying to do
il y
the
a une personne
opposite.
qui essaie de faire
There's
le
someone who's
contraire,
trying to
qui
weaken
essaie
our
d'affaiblir
economy.
notre économie.
Yeah, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we
Donald
know,
Trump,
has
comme
put,
nous le savons,
as the Prime Minister just said,
et le Premier ministre a
unjustified
souligné, a mis
tariffs
de l'avant
on
des
what we
tarifs
build, on what
injustifiés
we
sur tout ce que
sell,
nous
on
construisons,
how we
vendons
make a
et
living.
comment nous gagnons nos vies.
He's attacking
Il s'est attaqué
Canadian
aux
families,
travailleurs,
workers,
aux
and
familles et aux
businesses.
entreprises
And we
canadiennes.
cannot let him
Et on ne peut
succeed.
pas le laisser faire.
And we won't. We won't. I am proud
Je suis
of the
fier
response of
de la
Canadians
réaction des
who are
Canadiens et des
making their
Canadiennes.
voices heard
Ils se sont
and
fait
their
entendre.
wallets felt. I am grateful
Je suis
for how our
reconnaissant
provinces are
de
stepping
voir
up
comment
to the
les
fight.
provinces
Because
canadiennes
when we are united, we
se sont
are
unis.
Canada strong.
Lorsque nous sommes unis, nous sommes un Canada fort.
The Canadian government
Le gouvernement
has rightly
canadien est
retaliated
allé
and
de
is rightly
l'avant avec ses mesures
retaliating
de
with our own
représailles.
tariffs that will
Nous
have
avons nos propres
maximum
tarifs.
impact in the
Cela aura
United
une
States and
incidence
minimum impact
importante aux
here in Canada.
États-Unis avec peu de répercussions ici au Canada.
And my government will keep our tariffs
Nous
on
maintiendrons ces
until the
tarifs
Americans show us
jusqu'à ce que les
respect.
Américains nous fassent preuve de respect.
And
Et nous les
until they can
maintiendrons
join
jusqu'à
us
ce qu'ils
in making credible
joignent à
and
nous,
reliable
à nous,
commitments to
et
free
qu'ils prennent
and
des
fair
engagements
trade.
fiables et crédibles envers
As Christian
le
did.
libre-échange équitable.
And in the meantime, we will
Entre-temps,
ensure that all the
nous nous
proceeds
que
from
tous
our tariffs
les
will be
résultats
used to
de nos
protect
tarifs
our workers.
seront utilisés pour protéger nos travailleurs.
Les Américains
the Americans,
veulent nos
they
ressources,
want our
notre
resources,
eau,
our water,
notre territoire,
our land,
notre pays.
our country even.
Jamais, oui. Pensez-y.
Never. Think about that for a
Pensez-y.
moment.
Ça va détruire
That will
notre
destroy
façon d'être.
our way of life.
The Americans want our resources,
Les Américains
our
veulent
water,
nos ressources, notre
our
eau,
land,
notre territoire,
our country.
notre pays.
Think about it.
Pensez-y.
If they succeeded,
S'ils
they
réussissent,
would destroy
cela
our way of
détruira
life.
notre façon d'être.
In America,
Aux États-Unis,
healthcare is a big
les soins de
business.
santé,
In
c'est
Canada,
toute une affaire.
it is
Au Canada,
a right.
c'est un droit.
Thank you. America,
Les États-Unis
America is a melting pot.
est un mélange
is a
de
mosaic.
plusieurs personnes et le Canada est en fait une mosaïque.
Aux États-Unis,
In the US,
on ne reconnaît pas les
differences
différences.
are not respected or
On ne reconnaît
recognized.
pas les Premières
First
Nations.
Nations aren't recognized.
Et il n'y aura jamais
And the
de
French
droit à la
language
langue française.
would never have any rights.
La joie de vivre, la culture
La joie
et
de
la
vivre,
langue française
culture
font
and the French
partie
language
de notre
are part of our
identité.
identity.
Et il faut les protéger, il
Protect
faut
that.
les
We
promouvoir.
must promote that as well.
On ne les échangera jamais,
We'll never
jamais pour
give them
n'importe
up
quel
for
accord
any
commercial.
trade agreement.
Yeah. Look, Canada, America is not Canada.
Les États-Unis, ce n'est
And
pas le
Canada
Canada.
never, ever
le Canada
will be part of
ne fera
America
jamais
in
partie des
any
États-Unis
way, shape, or
D'une
form.
façon ou d'une autre.
Look, we didn't ask for this fight.
Nous n'avons pas choisi
We
de
didn't
les
ask for this
affronter.
fight. But Canadians are
Mais les
always
Canadiens
ready
sont toujours
when
prêts.
someone else drops the gloves.
Lorsque quelqu'un
So the Americans,
rentre dans le ring,
they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey,
En commerce, tout
Canada
comme au hockey,
will win.
le Canada l'emportera.
Aux Américains,
Now, to Americans,
je vous dis,
I say to
comme au
you,
hockey, nous allons
as
gagner.
in hockey, we will win.
Mais cette victoire
But that
ne sera
victory
pas facile.
won't be easy.
Nous faisons face à la
We're
crise la plus
facing
importante de notre vie.
the greatest crisis of
Nous
our
devrons faire
lifetimes.
des choses
We have to do
extraordinaires
extraordinary
ensemble.
things and together.
Nous devrons construire des
We
choses
have
que
to
nous
build
n'avions
things
jamais
that we've never
imaginées, un
imagined we would
rythme
have to do
que nous
at a
n'aurions
pace that
jamais
we would
cru
have never
possible.
believed possible.
Et surtout,
And above all,
nous devons mettre
must
les gens
place people
avant l'argent.
above money.
Il faut s'unir. Il faut
We have
s'unir
to
pour
unite
bâtir le pays
to
le plus
build
fort, le plus
the
juste et
strongest,
le plus libre du
the
monde.
fairest and the freest country in the world.
Now, Donald Trump is trying to weaken our economy.
Donald Trump essaie
But
d'affaiblir
there's
notre
someone
économie.
else
Mais il y a une autre personne
If he succeeds,
qui
will
essaie de faire de
weaken
même.
our
Et
economy.
s'il réussit, pourra
It's
le
Pierre
faire.
Poilievre.
Il s'agit de Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre just doesn't
Pierre
get it.
Poilievre ne le comprend pas.
He is the type of lifelong
Il est un
politician,
politicien de
and I've seen this
carrière.
type around the world,
Et
a
j'en ai vu
lifelong
partout sur la
politician who
planète.
worships at the altar of the free market despite
Alors, il est
never
au pied
having
du
made a payroll
marché libre.
himself.
Malgré le fait qu'il n'ait jamais été responsable.
And
de
now,
l'économie.
and now, in the face
Maintenant,
of President
nous
Trump's
faisons
threats,
face aux menaces de
Pierre
Trump.
Poilievre still
Poilievre
refuses to get
refuse
his
toujours
security clearance.
d'obtenir sa cote de sécurité.
At a time when our
À un
national
moment où
security is
notre
under threat
sécurité
as has
nationale
never
est
been
menacée
before.
comme jamais auparavant.
At a time of immense economic insecurity, he
Nous
would
faisons face à
undermine the
une
Bank of
insécurité
Canada.
économique et il veut
Monsieur Poiliev,
la Banque du Canada.
Monsieur Poiliev veut fermer Radio-Canada. Radio-Canada et CBC. Ouais. À un moment où la désinformation et l'ingérence étrangère sont en plein essor. Il insulte nos maires et il ignore les Premières Nations quand il est temps de bâtir. Il mettra fin à l'aide internationale alors que la démocratie et les droits de la personne sont en péril à travers le monde. Et il laissera notre planète brûler. Pierre Poilievre would let our planet
laissera
burn.
notre planète brûler.
This is not
Ce
leadership.
n'est pas faire preuve de leadership.
It's ideology.
C'est une idéologie.
It's ideology that betrays what we as Canadians value.
Qui trahit les valeurs canadiennes.
It's an ideology that also represents a fundamental.
It's 11 o'clock. You're watching Sky News, and we are following the maiden speech of Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England, and now Canada's new Prime Minister after he won an election as leader of the Liberal Party. He has been speaking about many of the challenges that Canada face, of course linked to Donald Trump, but now he is speaking about the Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Let's listen in.
When we must build a new economy and create new trading relationships.
Et créer de nouvelles relations commerciales.
Let me tell you something else that we know
J'aimerais
that Pierre
rajouter.
Poilievre doesn't.
Voici ce que Pierre Poilievre ne sait pas.
We know that markets don't have values.
Je sais que les marchés n'ont pas de valeur. Les gens en ont.
And we know as liberals that it's our job
Il nous
to
incombe
make markets, to make the economy
de faire
work for
fonctionner les
all
marchés
Canadians.
afin que cela fonctionne pour nous tous.
These are the most powerful
Les
tool we've ever
marchés sont les
invented. They
outils
can
les
find
plus puissants que
solutions
nous
to our
ayons
greatest
jamais
problems.
inventés. Cela nous aide à trouver des
And
solutions aux
when the
problèmes les
private
plus
sector, when the
importants.
markets are governed
Lorsque
well,
les
they
marchés
deliver
fonctionnent
great
bien,
jobs and stronger growth
cela
faster
crée
than
de
anything.
bons emplois et une bonne
But
croissance.
markets are also
Mais les marchés
indifferent
sont
to
aussi
human suffering,
indifférents à la
and
souffrance
they are
humaine
blind to our greatest needs.
et aveugles aux plus grands
So when
besoins.
they're not governed well,
Lorsque
or not at all,
il n'y a pas
they will
de
deliver
gouvernance,
enormous wealth for the lucky few
il y
and
aura
hard
une grande
times for
richesse
the
pour
rest.
quelque peu et de moments très difficiles pour le reste.
And in this crisis,
Dans le cadre de cette
we
crise,
must help those
nous
who are
devons
hit hardest
aider
by
ceux qui
the
sont le plus
American
durement
tariffs
touchés par les
while we
tarifs,
build our strength here at home.
alors que nous
That's the right thing to do.
consolidons
That's the fair thing to do. That is
ce que
the
nous faisons
Canadian
ici à la maison.
thing to do.
C'est la bonne chose à
That
faire.
is
C'est
what
ce que les
makes
Canadiens
us
font.
strong.
Et c'est ce qui fait de nous un pays solide.
So Donald Trump
Donald Trump
thinks
pense
he can weaken us
qu'il
with
peut
his
nous
plan
affaiblir
to divide and
avec son
conquer.
approche de diviser pour
Pierre
conquérir.
Poilievre's plan will leave us
Le
divided
plan de Pierre
and ready to
Poilievre
be
nous
conquered.
divisera et nous serons prêts à être conquis.
Because a person who worships
Pour
at
une
the altar
personne
of Donald Trump will
qui vénère
kneel
Donald
before
Trump
him, not stand up to
s'agenouillera
him.
devant lui plutôt que de l'affronter.
Pierre Poilievre's slogans are not
Les slogans de Pierre
solutions. His
Poilievre ne sont
anger
pas des
is in
solutions.
action. His
Sa
division is
colère
in
n'est pas de
strength.
l'action, sa division n'est pas de la force.
Division won't win a
La
trade war.
division ne peut pas emporter
Division won't
une guerre
pay the
commerciale.
rent
La
or the
division ne
mortgage.
paiera pas non plus le loyer ni
Division won't
l'hypothèque.
bring down the
La
price of
division ne fera pas
groceries.
baisser le prix du paquet
Division
d'épicerie
won't make
et ne rendra
Canada
pas le
strong.
Canada plus fort.
Voilà où mène la politique
This is
négative
where
de la
negative
division
politics and division
et de la colère.
and anger takes us.
La moitié
Half
des États-Unis
of the US
craignent l'autre.
fears the
Ils
other
s'en
half.
méfient.
They're wary of each other.
Nous ne pouvons pas laisser
We
une telle
can't allow
situation
such a
se produire
situation
au
to
Canada.
occur here in Canada.
Les Américains
The Americans
Les Américains deviennent de plus en plus
increasingly
divisés,
divided,
ce qui va les
and this
affaiblir.
will weaken them.
Et nous
And
gagnerons
we will win
cette bataille
this fight
si nous sommes unis
if we
et
are
forts.
united and strong.
Ouais. Ouais, on peut.
Yes.
On peut se disputer au sujet
We
de la
might
politique.
disagree over policy.
On peut se disputer à propos
We might
de hockey.
disagree over hockey.
On peut même
You
être
can
une fan
support
des
the
Oilers
in Ottawa. That's possible.
C'est un pays libre.
It's a free country after all.
Mais quand il s'agit
But
du
when it comes
Canada,
to Canada,
nous sommes tous du
we're
même
all
côté.
on the same
Choisissons
side.
fort.
Let's choose to be
Canada
strong.
fort.
Canada strong.
Now, I've learned a few things from
J'ai
long
appris
experience
quelque chose
in
de mon
crises.
expérience
And the first
lorsque
is
nous sommes dans
that
une crise.
plan beats no plan.
Le premier, c'est qu'un plan
And you
ne
need
peut
to
pas battre un
distinguish
autre plan.
what you
Et
can
nous devons
change
faire la
from what you
différence
can't.
entre ce que nous pouvons changer et ce que nous ne pouvons pas changer.
We can't change
D'une part,
Donald Trump.
on ne peut pas changer Donald
Can't
Trump.
change him. Nous devons comprendre ce que nous
But we have to
pouvons et
understand
devons
what we
changer.
can and we must
Nous
change.
sommes maîtres chez
We are
nous.
masters in our own house.
And we can. And because we're masters in our
Étant
own
donné que
home,
nous sommes maîtres
we
chez
can
nous,
control
nous
our
pouvons
economic
contrôler notre destinée
destiny with a
économique
plan that puts
avec un
more
plan
money in
qui
your
met plus
pockets.
d'argent dans vos poches.
A plan
Un
that
plan
will
qui
ensure
s'assurera
your
que votre
government spends
gouvernement
less so Canada
dépense
can
moins
invest
afin que le
more.
Canada puisse investir
A
davantage.
plan,
Un plan qui permettra
a plan that builds
la construction
millions
de
of
millions de
homes.
maisons,
A plan
qui
that
fera
makes us an energy
du Canada une
superpower in both
superpuissance
clean and
énergétique.
conventional
Un
energy.
plan qui créera de nouveaux corridors.
A plan that creates new trade corridors with reliable
avec des
partners.
partenaires fiables.
A plan that creates one Canadian
Qui créera
economy,
une
not
économie
13.
canadienne et non pas 13.
Because in Canada, we are stronger
Au
when we're
Canada,
united.
nous sommes plus forts lorsque nous sommes unis.
We can give ourselves far, far more
Nous
than
pouvons
Donald
nous
Trump
redonner
can
beaucoup
ever
plus que ce que
take
Donald
away.
Trump peut nous enlever.
But it will take
Nous devrons
extraordinary
faire beaucoup
efforts.
d'efforts.
It won't be business as
Ce ne
usual.
sera pas faire des
We
affaires
will
comme
have to
à
do things we
l'habitude.
haven't imagined before
Nous
at
devrons
speeds we
sortir des
didn't think
sentiers
possible.
battus à un
We
rythme
will do
plus
it.
accéléré. Nous serons
We
capables
will
de le
do it
faire.
for the
Nous
common
le
good,
ferons pour
so
le
that
bien commun, de sorte que
everyone
tous les Canadiens et les
benefits.
Canadiennes puissent en tirer profit.
You know,
Vous savez,
I do care about the economy,
l'économie me tient à cœur,
but it's not because I'm an
mais
economist.
ce n'est pas parce que je suis un
It's
économiste.
because I care about people.
C'est que les Canadiens et les
That's why
Canadiennes me
I'm a
tiennent à
liberal.
cœur. C'est la raison pour laquelle
That's
je
why
suis
we
un libéral.
are liberals.
C'est la raison pour laquelle nous sommes des libéraux.
On sait que la valeur d'une économie forte commence par des travailleurs qui ont de bons emplois bien payés aujourd'hui et des avenirs plus brillants pour les jeunes de demain. Nous savons, en tant que libéraux, que nous ne pouvons pas redistribuer ce que nous n'avons pas. Nous savons que nous ne pouvons pas être forts à l'étranger si nous sommes faibles à la maison. Et nous savons que nous ne pouvons pas construire un avenir meilleur si nous ne pouvons pas gérer le présent. So, we need a strong economy.
Nous avons besoin d'une
But when
économie
we're fighting for a
forte.
strong economy,
Et lorsque nous nous battrons pour une économie
we're
forte,
fighting for
nous sommes en train de nous
good Canadian
battre
health care
pour
for
des soins
everyone.
de santé
We are fighting
pour les
for
Canadiens,
strong
pour tout le
support
monde.
for our seniors
Nous
who
voulons
built
soutenir
this
nos
country.
aînés qui ont bâti
We
ce
are
pays.
fighting for
Nous voulons
child
nous
care
battre
for young
pour des
families
services de garde pour les jeunes
that
familles.
they put in place. We are fighting for dental care and
Nous nous battons
pharma care
également pour
for everyone
le
who
régime de
needs
soins
it.
dentaires et
We are
d'assurance
fighting for
médicaments
rights.
pour tous ceux qui en ont besoin.
We are fighting for a strong economy
Nous
so we
voulons une
can
économie
create a
solide
more
afin que nous
sustainable
puissions
world
créer
for our
un
children
monde
and
durable
grandchildren,
pour nos enfants et petits-enfants.
and we will deliver.
Et nous le ferons.
Well, thank you. I know that these are
Nous faisons
days.
face à des moments sombres.
dark days brought on by
Mais
a
ces
country
moments
we can no longer trust.
sombres sont devant
We
nous en
are
raison de
getting
pays
over the shock.
à qui l'on ne peut
But
plus
let
faire
us never forget
confiance.
the lessons.
Mais n'oublions pas cette
We
leçon.
have to look after
Nous devons
ourselves.
prendre soin de nous-mêmes.
And we have to look out
Et nous
for
devons
each
également
other.
nous épauler les uns
We
les
need
autres.
to pull together
Nous
in the tough
devons
days
nous
ahead.
rassembler pour faire face aux jours difficiles qui nous attendent.
And so, to those families watching this evening
Pour les
in
familles
Fort
qui nous
Smith
écoutent ce
in
soir depuis
Edmonton
Fort Smith
and
à
across
Edmonton
every community
et dans
in Canada,
toutes les communautés du
I
Canada,
promise you this.
voici ce que je vous promets.
Together,
Ensemble,
we can and
nous
we
pouvons
will get through this
et nous
crisis.
pourrons passer à travers cette crise.
We can and we will come out
Et nous
stronger
en
than
ressortirons beaucoup
ever,
plus forts que jamais auparavant.
and we will because
Et nous
Canada
le ferons,
is built
car le
on the
Canada
strength of its people.
repose sur la
From our mines
force
to our ports,
de ses résidents,
from our
de
logging
nos mines à
roads to
nos
our city
ports,
streets.
de nos
We're strongest
chemins
when we're
forestiers à
united,
nos
when we're one
rues
economy, not
urbaines.
13,
Nous sommes
when
plus
we
forts
can
lorsque nous
cheer
sommes
for
unis,
different teams
lorsque nous sommes une économie
and
et
still
non pas
be on one
13,
team when it counts.
et lorsqu'on peut
When we
soutenir
come together,
différentes équipes
when we come
et être
together,
quand même une
we
équipe
build
lorsque c'est
things that
nécessaire.
last because
Ensemble,
we
nous pouvons
are
bâtir quelque chose qui peut
Canada
durer, car
strong.
nous sommes un Canada
Vive le
fort.
Canada!
Vive le Canada!
Merci tout le monde.
Mark Carney speaking there at the Liberal Party Leadership Convention in Ottawa, where he has just been announced as the leader, the new leader of the Liberal Party. And of course, that means he's also the de facto Canadian Prime Minister. Former Governor of the Bank of England and also former Governor of the Bank of Canada in this maiden speech. And just to say that he won that election by a staggering 85% of the vote. So an overwhelming victory there. And in his maiden speech, both as leader of the Liberals and also Prime Minister, he, of course, referenced Donald Trump and the threat from the United States. He called the tariffs that the U.S. has put on Canada of 25% as unjustified tariffs on Canada. He said that it was an attack on families, that Donald Trump wanted to hurt Canadian families and that we cannot let him succeed, is the direct quote. He also said that Canada will keep reciprocal tariffs on until Americans show us some respect, that Americans want our resources, water, land, country, and Canada will never be part of America in any way, shape, or form. This, of course, I guess a reply to the many times that Donald Trump recently has said that Canada could and should be the 51st state. Well, let's bring in our international correspondent, Diana Magnay. Diana, very interesting speech there and an overwhelming victory as well from Mark Carney.
Yes, I think the one phrase that stuck with me there, and what was a long speech and will be a phrase that was directed really to Donald Trump's ear, was "In trade as in hockey, Canada will win." And this idea that Mark Carney there is really trying to unite the country against division and against Donald Trump's attacks. And I think that speech which we saw there, you know, he's preaching to the converted. This is the Liberal Party. They elected him with, as you say, an overwhelming majority. But his real challenge is to win over the rest of the country. He talked a lot about the threat from Donald Trump to try and undermine and weaken Canada, but also there is the threat from the Conservative Party, which he's up against, Pierre Poilievre, who he talked about there, who he accuses really of being a sort of Trumpian vassal, also somebody who would bow at the altar of Donald Trump, he said, and not stand up for Canada's defence or unite the country. Well, I'm sure that if Pierre Poilievre was able to stand up, he would probably say that that was simply not the case. But we now have a situation where Mark Carney will have to either call an election in the near future, or the opposition will push through a vote of no confidence. So either way, we are going to have an election pretty soon. It has to happen before October under the Constitution, but it's likely to be much sooner than that. And although this threat from Donald Trump has united Canada and led to a real surge in the fortunes of the Liberal Party, which 2 months ago, when Mark Carney decided that he really needed to step up and go for the leadership, was really trailing in the polls. That was before Donald Trump was inaugurated. That was before Donald Trump started this tariff war. That was before the threats of economic dismemberment, which is essentially what Donald Trump is threatening, really came to the fore. And now we have a situation where actually the Liberals and the Conservatives are pretty much neck and neck in the polls. And I think what we saw there from Mark Carney was an attempt not just to bring the Liberal Party behind him, but to bring the entire country behind him against the threat, the existential threat that Donald Trump represents to Canada at the moment, Barbara.
And Diana, Mark Carney is, of course, a very familiar face to us here in the UK. He's former governor of the Bank of England. He was also governor of the Bank of Canada, and Canada is one of the countries that sort of pulled itself out of the shock of the financial crisis back in 2008, one of the first ones to do so. How big an impact do you think that background had on his overwhelming victory of 85% of the vote?